the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Today, in recognition of the last week of April being Autism Awareness Month, I invited my wife Sharon onto the podcast to talk about what it is like being the mother of an autistic child. And my stepdaughter Maddie is on the autism spectrum, so my wife Sharon wanted to come on and talk about that, and also being the wife of an MS warrior for the last 12 years, and we're going to talk a little bit about that also. But please welcome my wife Sharon. How you doing, Sharon?
Good. Hi, everybody.
Sharon, I met you 12 years ago, and I didn't really have a whole lot of knowledge about autism. And when we met and you told me that you had a daughter on the autism spectrum, I really didn't understand it. I mean, my vision of autism was always the severe type. And, you know, Maddie is a very high-functioning girl, but I know that she did not start out that way on the spectrum. You had a long battle with her the first part of her life, and, I mean, it's still a battle today, but I just want you to talk a little bit about what it is like and what you went through when Maddie was born, and how you even had to fight for her diagnosis of being on the spectrum.
Absolutely. So actually, she is 25 right now, and so she's not a child anymore, and she's on the spectrum, and she has overcome so much. But when she was first born, I absolutely picked up on some signs that she was having. Immediately, when you want to swaddle your baby up in the blankets and, tightly, swaddle them and have them comforted, and Maddie didn't want that. She did not want to be wrapped up and kicked and screamed. And also the pajamas, she didn't want her feet in them. I used to have to cut the feet out. Like when she was 2 months old, 3 months old, we were already doing that.
So she had sensory issues as a newborn.
Right.
You can tell that.
Right. Well, I have always worked with people with developmental disabilities, and autism was actually, one of my close specialties that I worked with. So, I had, known signs because of my previous employment. Mm-hmm. So then she just, it seemed like if she was in a room, if the TV was too loud, she would get very agitated, start crying. And, the pajama issue just got worse and worse and worse. So, I was cutting things out. And then as she got older, I noticed she didn't want tags on the back of her clothing, socks. I mean, keeping clothes on her was an absolute challenge. Like, I would get her dressed and turn around to walk out of the room, and she was naked again.
Yeah. I know you told me so many stories, and I was just like, wow, this is just crazy. And talk a little bit about how you were going to doctors back then, when Maddie was, a year or 2 years old, and you knew that something wasn't right with your daughter, and you just had doctors that just did not want to listen.
Right. So Maddie was also very sick at the time, too. She had very bad tonsils. She had chronic ear infections all the time, where she actually ruptured her eardrum, and they had to do a skin graft on her to patch it. And so we were literally at the doctor's, I am not kidding, every week. And So I kept telling her pediatrician at the time, like, there's something wrong with her. My child's having meltdowns, screaming and yelling. I can't keep clones on her. I can't get her to eat certain foods. It's just like I can't take her into stores or restaurants. And so, of course, after me, battling with him day after day after day, he told me that it was bad parenting and he was going to send me for parenting classes. So at that point, I was like, all right, fine, send me, because I was hoping maybe somebody else would notice that it wasn't bad parenting,
Yeah.
So later that afternoon, I got a phone call from a child psychiatrist office, and, they wanted to set up an appointment. So we set up the appointment, and my husband then, at the time, we went down, and they told us to bring Maddie with us, and she was about 4 years old at this time. So I had been battling all this for 4 years. We went into the office, and they asked Maddie to sit down and play with the toys they had there. So they had cars, and Maddie just lined the cars up according to the type of car, if it's a truck, the colors, and then crayons and coloring books. She took all the crayons and put them in color order. So that's how Maddie played. She didn't know how to play. She didn't know how to drive the cars. Like, it was hard to teach a child to play.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And I was doing home daycare because Maddie was so sick. Her immune system was so low. She couldn't go to daycare.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, trying to socialize her as much as I could. So I did home daycare and had a few children come into the house. And it was the same thing. Maddie parallel played with them.
Yeah.
Like, she sat alongside of them and did her thing while they were doing theirs, but she never interacted.
Yeah.
And after being in the psychiatrist's office for about 10 minutes and, him watching her, he immediately said, she's autistic, she's on the spectrum, we need to get her in, therapy, OT, PT, speech. But one thing that he said to me that, was a stabbing is he said that she would never make it through school. And I was like, excuse me? She's not that bad. So those words registered, and I was like, okay, you just put me up to the challenge.
Yeah.
You're not going to confine my daughter or tell her what she's not going to be able to do.
So how old was Maddie when you finally got that diagnosis?
She was 4.
So for 4 years, you're sitting there and you're battling. You're going back and forth to doctors saying, there's something going on with my child, and nobody was listening to you, and they were blaming it on bad parenting. And after 4 years, that had to be a feeling of, I told you so. I knew something was going on.
Exactly. It was, and then my husband at the time, because Brian and I, this is a second marriage for us, and I ended up divorcing Maddie's dad, but Maddie's dad at the time didn't believe it either, and so I'm battling him. I'm battling, doctors, and, but I didn't quit. It was 24/7 because I'm like, there's something wrong with my child.
Yeah.
I need to get help. Because if I don't, where would she go?
Right.
So I didn't quit. It was a 24/7 job. And, it was rough, but I'm like, I have to do this for her. I have to be the voice for her, because I felt it was awful, because she didn't know what was going on, and she didn't know how to speak or tell me. She could speak, but she didn't know the words to say how she was feeling.
How to express herself.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I had to be her voice to these doctors.
Yeah.
And so I knew I couldn't quit. I couldn't turn my back on her. As a mother, I couldn't do that. Yeah. And would it have been easier to do that? Absolutely. But no, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Plus, she also had constipation issues that were so severe she almost died. She was in the hospital, and they said if they didn't get her blockage undone, that she was going to die in 24 hours. So being on the being autistic, we also had medical problems too. So Maddie spent a lot of time in the hospital too at younger years. So she had a rough childhood. So we ended up getting her an OT, PT, and speech, which she didn't like. We would drive down. It was about 45 minutes from our house. And the whole way down, she would be screaming in the back of the car, I hate you, because she didn't want to go. And,
That had to be really hard to hear as a mom. You're just trying to do everything in the world to help your daughter, and you got a little girl in the back seat just yelling at you and telling you how much she hates you, and you're doing it out of love. And
right.
that's just it. That just had to be such a hard, difficult time period. And especially doing it without your husband on board.
Correct.
I knew that had to be difficult too,
Correct.
because I mean, parenting is two people, and if you don't have both people on board, that just makes this journey just all the more hard for the child and for you and everybody involved. I know that when Maddie had her issues, just talk a little bit more about those and just go, because I know where Maddie's at now. I mean, she's going to be a pharmacist, but I know that it's been a long road to get there. And I've seen some of the small things that she's actually improved on when she was 12 years old. Just like the things with needles. I mean, she was deathly afraid of needles when I met
right.
her, and now she's getting all tatted up, and she overcame that. But just talk about her sensory issues with like needles, with noise. I know that when we first met, we had to really plan out going out to dinner if we took the kids out, because she just couldn't handle noises around her. And that's one of the things that I learned, by being around you, being around Maddie, and just understanding it a little bit better.
Right. So, Maddie, trying to get children their shots, it took 5 nurses to hold Maddie down because she was so strong to fight them. And when she was in the hospital getting IVs started, it was the same thing, 4 or 5, nurses holding her down to get these started. It was terrible. It was awful. And I'm crying, and, my mom would be there. Of course, my parents were there helping all along. I couldn't have done it without them, and they're not here with us now. But yeah, they were a great help in my life with Maddie. And I do want to thank my ex-sister-in-law, Kathy, because she didn't live in the same state, but she works with people with developmental disabilities. So she tried to help me as much as she could with advice. And, and I have a nephew that has Asperger's. So she completely understood, and, I could call her crying, and, she was there for me. So yeah. I definitely want to give, shout out to her. But, but now Maddie, my dad was in ICU before he passed away, and Maddie was 15 years old, and we went to visit him, and they came in to, do some type of injection. And he already had the IV in, so they were just injecting it into the tubing. And next thing we know, Maddie's on the ground. She had passed out.
Yep. And I was there for that one, too.
Right.
So that was like, I was just starting to learn about the autism and the sensory stuff. And, here's a funny story, though. And I want you to tell this one, because this is really funny. But this is a sensory thing, too. Tell the story of when Maddie was a little girl and guys went and she was feeding the goats.
Oh, so Maddie's, yeah, she'll probably kill me for telling about this, but
it's a great story.
So Maddie's defense mechanism, when she got extra stimulated or upset and didn't know how to express it verbally, she would bite. And I mean bite. And so you had to be careful. So I warned all the kids in the daycare that were there, and I mean, most of them became like her brothers and sisters. That's how close-knit we were. And so, I would, warn them, Maddie's going to bite. Better watch out. Better back away. Maddie's going to bite. And even with her first boyfriend at age, 17?
Yeah.
He was tickling her really bad. And I'm like, dude, you better stop, because I can see the look in her eye. She's going to bite you.
Yeah.
So I took my nieces and nephews to the zoo. And we're over in the petting zoo part where the goats are and all that, and I'm on one side and Maddie's on the other side with a couple of my nephews, and all of a sudden I hear my nephew Josh screaming, Aunt Sharon, and I'm like, what? And he's like, Maddie just bit a goat. And I'm like, what? So I go running over there, and I'm like, Madylyn, and she goes, well, he bit me first. So Maddie grabbed the goat by the ear and bit him in the face.
That's so awesome.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, Madylyn. So my nephew, to this day, Madylyn's 25, he still teases her about it, about her biting goats.
I do too.
Yes.
I think it's hilarious.
Right.
But I mean, that's an autism thing. That was her. That was
her. Right. Her defense mechanism was biting. And we also had a big trampoline in the backyard and one of the mini ones inside. And I knew when she had a bad day, because if she came home and got right on the trampoline, I knew she had, problems at school, and, couldn't talk to her about them because she, most, the time I couldn't get Maddie to talk about things. So if she just went and got on the trampoline, I knew, because Maddie liked the deep input, the deep pressure massage. Light touches hurt her. So we did deep input massage therapy. So like I would do compression on her joints, where I would take both two sides of her joint and compress them together real deep. And then I had this special brush that I would brush her skin real deep and hard. And so we had special therapies for her specific, autism. Like everyone's different. There's the low functioning. Maddie was definitely high functioning. But so, that's what the therapists do. They zone in and you get therapy specific for your child. So Maddie needed deep pressure therapy. And so the trampoline was definitely her deep pressure. And some days she would come home and just jump on that trampoline for an hour.
Yeah.
And,
talk a little bit about the tools that she developed at a young age with stemming.
So stemming is when they're overstimulated and they need something to calm them down. So Maddie had all different things. She even had some of the stemming necklaces that she would wear that she could rub on. A lot of people with autism like to rub on things silky, smooth. So Maddie had these two little wooden blocks that were always on her desk. And I don't even know where she got them, but they were always on her desk. And I never asked, because when she was getting older, you don't want to ask and embarrass her and stuff. So I never asked, but it was funny. We had gone to Middle Bass Island on vacation with Brian and his kids and my mom and Brian's mom. And I went upstairs in the bedroom next to where Maddie was sleeping, and on the dresser was those two little blocks. I'm like, okay, those definitely have to be stemming, therapies, because they came on vacation with us. So I took Brian up there and I'm like, look there's those two little blocks. They came with us. Yeah. So, we finally asked her at an older age, and she said, she likes them because they're smooth and she can touch them in the edges. Yeah. And then when she went through high school, changing classes with, hundreds of other kids, she used to carry a pink eraser in her pocket and rub on it while she was changing classes to keep her calm and not overstimulate. Yeah. And like the normal person can walk into a room and not hear a light buzzing above them, Maddie can hear that. So like going to Walmart, she can hear all those lights buzzing, and then all the people, and then all the talking and the cash registers, and it's just overstimulating. So every day I would take Madylyn to Walmart. I don't care if we just walked in the door and had to turn around and walk out. We tried. And that was a daily activity. And my mom and dad would try it with her and do it. One of us would always make sure we got her to Walmart. And I never thought she'd make it through a whole shopping trip at Walmart. She finally ended up doing it. And I have to thank Tammy and her mom, Sharon, because they were awesome, too, with helping me with Maddie. They knew everything that was going on. And so Tammy would let Maddie spend the night at her house and to give me a break, because I needed it. And Tammy's mom, Sharon, had worked at Walmart. So we would go up to see Grandma Sharon a lot. And so Maddie didn't realize that was part of her therapy. But let's go to Walmart and see Grandma Sharon. Or, we're going to go pick up Dalton and Emily at Grandma Sharon's work. It was just an excuse and a way to get Madylyn to Walmart. Yeah. Well, then at age 16, Maddie was looking for a job, for college, get some money. And guess where she got her first job? Walmart. I never thought in a million years that she was going to be able to handle working as a cashier at Walmart.
Right.
But she did. And like when she put that little vest on and got her name tag, I'm like, I need a picture because
Right.
I was so proud of her. Like, I'm like, my kid works at Walmart. Like,
Yeah.
and the same thing, like when she got her for her graduation from high school, I said, what do you want? And she said, I want a tattoo. I'm like, you're not going to be able to sit through that. She goes, oh, yes, I am.
Yeah.
So what did we do? We went up to the tattoo parlor because I had a sign because she was only 17. And she got her first tattoo for her graduation gift. And most parents would be like, are you out of your mind? You got your kid a tattoo at 17. I'm like, oh, yeah.
We were proud as hell. Yeah.
Right. And she sat through the whole thing. And I got probably 50 pictures from that night.
Yeah.
And then after her first year of getting through pharmacy school, she went and got a sleeve done.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of her because I'm like, you sat for a full sleeve. And it's amazing.
It is. It's completely amazing. Just, I was only around for half of Maddie's life, and the half that I seen, it was just amazing watching just the different, like the growth that she had and the improvement. She just went from a kid that didn't really have a whole lot of social skills. Brilliant girl as a 12-year-old, but not a very social girl. And that was the autism thing. But I mean, now she is just, she's still, her favorite thing is still not being in a crowded room, but she does go out a lot, and she goes outside the box so much. And I think that's just like, you working with her as a parent, I think that was just so important. And you got to put them out, push them outside their box. Talk a little bit about how you fought so that she never got labeled with the autism diagnosis.
Well, that's the other thing. So Maddie went to private school in her younger grades, then regular elementary school. She actually skipped a grade. She went from 5th to 7th. And went to public school. We moved from Tennessee to Ohio back in 2011. And I never told the school she was on the spectrum because I didn't want her labeled. Yeah. I'm like, no, she has too much potential. So in pre-K 3, we had some problems. There was one teacher 3 days a week, one teacher 2 days a week. Well, Maddie couldn't do nap time unless her blanket was completely flat, not a wrinkle, nothing, right? So the one teacher 3 days a week was like, okay, she had no problem straightening Madylyn's blanket out. Well, Tuesdays and Thursdays, every day I got a phone call at nap time from the other teacher that Maddie's crying and won't take a nap. And I would tell her, all you have to do is straighten her blanket out. Is her blanket smooth?
Yeah.
I can't do that. I don't have time to do that for every child. I'm like, all you have to do is straighten her blanket out and she'll take a nap, I promise you. Well, the teacher still wouldn't cooperate, so I just ended up not sending Maddie to preschool on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm like, okay, we'll solve that. She's not going to miss much. And I didn't label her. I didn't want her labeled because I'm like, we can do this. We can do this. We can work around, if there's an issue, we'll work around it. Like the same thing, they had roller skating in gym. Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't get Maddie to wear socks. She wore shoes to school, no socks. Okay, pick your battles. Well, she had to wear socks because they were rental skates. Well, the gym teacher said, well, if Maddie doesn't wear socks, she can't roller skate. So Maddie and I had a serious discussion. Either you have to wear socks and you can roller skate, or you don't wear socks and you're going to have to sit and watch all your friends roller skate. Maddie chose not to wear socks and just sit there and watch. Yeah. Okay, it worked out. So finally, we got to her senior year in high school. I had never been invited to a parent conference because Maddie graduated with a 4.9. So senior year, it was parent conference night. And I said, Maddie, we're going. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Get dressed. We're going up to your conferences. She's like, whatever. So we go up there, and I wanted to let every one of her teachers know that Maddie made it all through school without one teacher knowing that she was on the autism spectrum and she wasn't labeled.
Yeah.
And they were just like amazed. Yeah. And, what tools we use. So I use the word tools is Maddie was a fan of Bob the Builder, and she's probably going to kill me for telling the story. but that's all she watched was Bob the Builder. And so I started off with, okay, you got a toolbox like Bob the Builder, and everything we learned in therapy, to help you, we're going to make it as a tool and put it in your toolbox. So one day when you're out and you're having problems, you open your toolbox and you'll have all your tools to help you. And so that's what we did. It wasn't a real toolbox. This was, all in our head and pretend. And so, Maddie goes off to college at 17. Now, mind you, I'm a wreck because, she's never been away from me that long, that far away.
Right.
And, she texted me one day that she had to, use her tools in her toolbox, but she did it.
Yeah.
And, because she had something like Maddie couldn't walk in rain. Could not walk in rain, could not stand the feeling of rain hitting her. So she refused to walk in the rain.
Yep.
And I would absolutely cringe when I'd wake up in the morning and it was raining. Like, how am I going to get her into the car and then into school?
Yeah.
It was, she wouldn't even want an umbrella. Like, it was that bad.
Yeah.
So when she went off to Miami, it was downpouring. She had to walk to class, and she sent me a picture, it soaked through her backpack, and she sent me pictures of her clothes. And that's when she said, hey, use my tools in my toolbox.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of her that she actually,
Yeah. Maddie is just amazing to learn about and just be around. She's just a brilliant girl. And I think that's a lot of the things that people just don't understand about the spectrum is that everybody thinks of autism as the severe end, just like MS. They think of MS with the severe end. You got people in wheelchairs. But there are so many different variances of autism. A lot of the brilliant scientists are on the autism spectrum, the ones that work at NASA, the ones that are going up in outer space. There are a lot of brilliant people that are on the autism spectrum, and they are so talented too. Even people that are on the severe end, they have a talent. It might be art. It might be, drawing or whatever, but everybody seems like on the autism spectrum, they just seem to have such a beautiful talent.
All of them are smart and beautiful in their own way.
Yeah.
And they all deserve to be treated equally, not labeled. And so I have to tell you a story that happened at work yesterday that was so adorable. So we're busy at work, and a mom came in with her son, probably in his 30s, and he was severe autistic, and so he just kept staring at me and staring at me and staring at me, and I'm smiling at him, and his mom kept calling him over by him while she was walking around the store, and she kept saying his name, come here, and
yeah.
And he was ignoring her and just staring at me. And so they finally come up to the register to check out. And he's at the opposite register that I'm at. And he smiles at me, and I said, hi. And he says, hi, Sharon. Because I, of course, have my name tag on.
Yeah.
And I said, hi, what's your name? And he goes, hi, I'm Sharon. And I just smiled and laughed. I said, are you being silly? And then he goes, hi, I'm Sharon, the assistant manager. And I'm like, well, he read my whole name tag, and see, if you looked at him, somebody would have labeled that he couldn't read.
Right.
And it was so cute. And I'm like, are you being silly? Are you playing with me?
Yeah.
And then he's like, hi, I'm Sharon. And it was just the cutest thing in the world. And then his mom's like, okay, I'm going to tell her what your name is since you aren't. And, she told me his name. So then, I said hi and said his name. And he's like, hi, I'm Sharon. And he just totally made my day. He made my coworkers start laughing. It was just, he made all the customers around smile. And just something they do like that, it just brings joy to your life. It just warms your heart. And that will stay with me forever. Not because he said my name, he could have said my coworker's name, but it's just, people, look when they walked into the store and, he was making noises as he walked around, but then read my name tag as clear as day and just playing a little game with me. Yeah. And, it was just awesome. And so my thing is with autism, if you're on the spectrum, severe, whatever, don't quit. Every day, work with your child, because you never know when you might have some breakthrough. Don't listen. Like the doctors told me, my child would never make it through school, and here she is in college working on getting her doctorate in pharmacy.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, I have a picture of my mother bawling looking at her bachelor's degree from Miami, because only people that spent time with Maddie as a child can really understand,
where she's at now and where she came from. Yeah.
Right. And, like I said, my parents are no longer with me, and, my mom knows Maddie went into pharmacy school. My mom saw Maddie get her white coat.
Yeah.
And my dad was already gone by then. And her dad, unfortunately, died from ALS. Yes. So he's not around to see that. But I mean, he would be proud.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's just you can't imagine where she was to where she's now.
Yeah.
And I know my sister-in-law, Kathy, Tammy from Tennessee. Like, I remember Maddie was sick and had bad constipation, so I had to put special stuff in her drinks so she would drink it to help, keep her going.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dalton was so cute. So Dalton was there, and I'd make a drink, and I'd be like, okay, Dalton, this is Maddie's special drink. Make sure none of the other kids drink it, right? Mm. So he would be so cute. Maddie, this is your special drink. You got to drink it, and he would help so much because he knew and understood. And and
that's important to have people around you that just get it.
Right.
I mean, it's great I'm sure it was great for Maddie to have younger people that understood her and just like worked with her.
Right. And it was great. I mean, Tammy was great, letting me take Dalton and Emily with me to go out to different activities, to expose Madylyn to different activities. I mean, they were like brothers and sisters growing up.
How about another thing that Maddie really got into, and I think that this is another tool that a lot of people that are on the spectrum use, that I didn't know about until I met Maddie, is horseback riding.
Oh, yes. So one of the therapists recommended, because Maddie had, like I said before, the deep input therapy. So they recommended horseback riding. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they recommended a lady that actually did therapeutic riding. So we went there, and Maddie actually really got into it. The input from the bouncing up and down on the horse was very deep input, and I'm sure you've probably seen it on TV and stuff about the therapeutic riding for people. Mm-hmm. Like they have Camp Cheerful right here in Strongsville, Ohio, for the people that are listening. I'm sure they have it around all the other states. So we did that with Maddie. She started that at age 3. And then right where we lived, the Cedars of Lebanon in Tennessee, they had stables. So we would go riding a lot. Well, then her dad and I were like, she's really getting into this. Let's investigate more. Well, then we found a lady that did riding lessons at a young age. So we went up and talked to her. So we ended up, it was Rent a Horse. So we rented Maddie a horse. And so every day we went up there, and Maddie had to feed the horse, bathe the horse and take care of the horse. And then she got riding lessons.
And that was her therapy.
And so, so we didn't go to the therapy one anymore. Then Maddie had her own horse. Yeah. And then Maddie eventually started competing.
Yeah.
And she did, not Western riding. Oh my gosh, I'm going
English.
English riding.
Yeah.
So we did. And then I taught Maddie, the proper, that was more posture, right? Proper with the posture and sitting up and all that. And so then she started competing and got ribbons. And then Maddie actually got thrown off her horse. And I went running around because I wanted to go to her. And then I stopped. And her riding coach went over to her and said, "You're getting back on that horse." And Maddie's crying and said, "No, I'm not." The instructor said, "Oh, yes, you are," and just picked her up, of course, making sure she was okay, and put Maddie back on that horse. And Maddie kept riding.
Yeah.
And, and so when we left Tennessee and came to Ohio, I said, "Maddie, let's find you a place to get a horse again, and you can continue." And she didn't want to, which I was surprised because she enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
But That's how she got into horses, was with the therapeutic, which I would recommend to anybody. That was just totally amazing.
Yeah, I know Maddie still to this day. I mean, she has just such a love for horses.
Right.
I mean, she'll watch the Kentucky Derby. I mean, she knows everything about horses. I mean, I think it's just an awesome therapy for kids that are on the spectrum.
Right. I mean, with that therapy, you could see such a big change in her so drastically over the other therapies we did. And one of the therapies she hated was the food pantry, because Maddie, it was hard to feed Maddie, and she was very tiny, underweight, and she went through a point where she only ate dog food, kibbles and bits.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor, and I was concerned, and he's like, at this point, we're getting food in her. She would eat dog biscuits. To this day, she'll eat a dog biscuit. Like, that part hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But, it's like, or she would eat Salisbury steak and canned green beans. She went through that phase for like 6 months.
Yeah.
So, like, getting her to try new foods, so she hated when they go in the food pantry and she had to pick a new food, and then the therapist picked one. Like, she just hated that. But now my child will go to a restaurant and pick the wildest thing on the menu.
Yeah.
And try it and eat it. Like, I'm like, so that's why I tease her now. I'm like, Maddie, you're fun to be around now, and now you don't live at home anymore. And but yeah, so she was a real picky eater for, oh my God, most of her life.
Yeah, it's it's just amazing that, if you attack the diagnosis when your kid's young, I'm not going to sit here and say, it's just like MS. I mean, there's severe types of autism, so
right.
You're going to have high needs. But I mean, if you still work with even the high needs, I mean, you can get so many awesome breakthroughs with
you can try. I mean, obviously you're not. I mean, I'm not saying you can get breakthroughs. I mean, some are severe and they're only going to be able to do so much, and they're challenged. But like I said before, my point is, don't stop. Keep trying. I mean, that's all I have to say, is never, ever stop. Don't ever give up. Because if I would have given up, where would my child be today? And Maddie has thanked me because she has made that comment. Yeah. Well, the other thing I just had a thought, the seatbelt could only go over one side of her, from the right to the left. And so my friend Tammy, when she would take Maddie home with her, she had to rearrange the car seats in her car because of her daughter Emily and stuff, because Maddie could only sit on the one side in her back seat.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, what's Maddie going to do when she drives? Because the seatbelt goes from the left to the right. Like, right. I was really concerned about it. Like, right. How's she going to handle that, adjustment, but she does, And we talk now, and, some things still bother her, but, she works through it, and,
Maddie, I mean, Maddie is just an amazing girl. She just, my thing about just knowing Maddie, and it's just anybody on the autism spectrum is that they are amazing people. They're brilliant people. And, you might look at them and say, wow, they're a little bit strange. They don't like to talk. They don't like, they don't like being around crowds. And you're just going to sit there and say, that's just different. No, you know what? That's just autism. Right. That's just autism.
Or next time you see a child throwing a fitness store and, think it's a kid being a brat, maybe you might want to think different. Maybe they're having an issue with hearing the lights and all the sounds going on and the smells. And I mean, I work in a chocolate store and we have kids that come in and have fits. Well, you're coming in, you're smelling chocolate, the music's loud, and I have a fit with that. I'm like, the music's too loud in here. We need to turn it down because I'm just so prone to, with my child, what I went through, so when Brian and I got together, he had Brad and Megan, and then I had Maddie, and he'd be like, oh, let's go out to eat.
Yeah.
Well, his kids would like to go to bars to eat.
I mean, my kids, it didn't matter.
Right.
I mean, it could be loud. It could be,
right.
It didn't matter.
TV's going, music playing, a bunch of people talking. Well, there would be no way I would be able to do that with Madylyn. Oh. So I'd be like, Brian, wait, where are we going? Because second of all, Maddie had to be told what we were doing, where we were going, what it was going to be like from day one.
Yep.
From day one that she could understand and talk, I had to explain everything that was going to be happening.
So she was prepared for it. Yep.
So she could, start mentally preparing. So he's like, what do you mean? We're,
Yeah.
And then I'm really like, she can't go in there. There's too much, stimulation. And so we'd have to, scale back. I'm like, we need to go to something calmer, like an Applebee's or this. And, and work up to it.
But it's just understanding it.
Right.
It's understanding it.
Well, now my child's going to trivia nights with her boyfriend and having fun. And I'm like, that makes me feel so good because even in college, my kid didn't do the average go to the bar.
Yeah.
Because she can't.
She didn't like that.
She can't handle that.
That wasn't her thing.
So at Miami, the big bar on campus is the Brick. She never went in there one time. So when we were moving her off of campus, the very last day, I'm like, come on, Maddie, let's go to the Brick just one time. So you can say you went here. We'll go during the day. Yeah. Are you out of your mind? Nope, Mom, we're not going.
Nope.
I tried. And then I'm like, Maddie, I want to see what the Brick's like.
Right.
But we couldn't do stuff like that. And so when she told me she's going to trivia night, I was like,
yeah. Babe, I want to start talking about MS, but I think we already filled the whole episode. So
sorry.
That's okay. This is Autism Awareness Month, and I definitely, we're going to do another episode. We'll talk about meeting, and we'll talk about, how we just accepted the MS and the autism together and how we worked through that the last 12 years.
Absolutely.
But do you want to give one more, just message to any parent that is battling, just the autism diagnosis? And if they do get that diagnosis, what kind of attitude they should take with bringing that kid up?
Don't give up. Keep a positive attitude. They are in your life for a reason. Madylyn has taught me so much. She's taught me so much in life. She's made me look at things in different ways that I've never looked at things, and never quit. Just never, ever, ever, ever quit. Never give up. And, if you call on a family member if you need help and need a break, or but they're special. They're very special, and
they are.
They deserve all the extra love and just they can teach you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you, babe. I appreciate Maddie. I appreciate you coming on here just to explain autism a little bit better, just so people that understand it a little bit better. Because that's what this is about. I just want people to understand chronic diseases or disabilities that people are born with, because it's just not understood. And just from going through the MS from 27 years, people just need to listen. And I really appreciate you coming on and helping me to spread awareness during the month of April, Autism Awareness Month. And don't forget to hit the follow button, whatever platform you're watching or listening to the podcast on. You can also follow me on Instagram, MSMichiganMan64, TikTok, MSMichiganMan64, and I am also on Facebook, Brian Wallace out of Brunswick, Ohio. Until the next episode, MS Michigan Man 64, I am out.